Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today, Masechtas Bava Metzia, Daf Kuf Aleph 101. We are going to begin on the bottom of Kuf Omid Beis by the new Mishnah. Says the Masnisan, Hamaycher Zeisav L'Eitzim. Let's say you have a person who sells an olive tree, but it's for the sake of firewood. So this person wants firewood. V'asu pachas mervius l'sa. And it turns out that it's able to produce olives. Rashi says, Zeisim royim, shin bisashal hem mervius shemen, that they are not able to produce so much oil because they're not of such great quality. So hari elu shel bal hazeisim. So it belongs to this new owner. So even though the bal hazeisim purchased this tree for firewood, but because the olive oil which would be produced is so minimal, so therefore he gets to keep it. However, asur revius l'sa, which is higher quality of oil than ze'omer zeisai gidloi v'ze'omer artzi gidla yachloku. So each party is going to want to be able to claim that olive oil is theirs, that it grew either by me, or rather it was due to my land and not the tree. So therefore, for that reason, each one is trying to claim that they have ownership over it. Therefore, because of that, we split it in the middle. Now, Shatav Nahar Zeisav. Let's say a river overflowed and washed someone's olive tree into someone else's field. So Shatav Nahar Zeisav. And it went into someone else's field. Ze'omer Zeisai Gidloi. Again, this one will say it's my olives, and therefore whatever is produced from the tree is mine. V'za'omer artzi gidla. The other one says it's my earth that caused these olives to be produced. So again, yachlok. So it says the word hechidami. What exactly is this case of the ratio of purchasing this olive tree for firewood? Now, in diar melei alter kites, if the moicher said that you chop down the tree right away, so a field pachas revius namlu bal karka. Apparently, it should all go to the owner of the land because he's telling him to chop it down right away. And therefore, the idea is that clearly the olives that are there were connected to the purchase before the purchase. Anytime you want, you can chop it down. So even if it's good quality olives, it should still go to the loikeach. So we're talking about a case where the meicher just sold this tree stam. If it's less than a revius, it's so insignificant, so not makbid, so the balazation can keep it. Revius kapti inchi. So Rav Shimon ben Paz revius shamru. When we talked about this revius of olive oils, we continued to kuf aleph amid aleph chutz bin hoitzah. That's excluding the expenses. Says Rashi, Shumaitzi b'misikasan v'etzirasan. The involvement in the expenses of the harvesting and all this, so that's excluded from that. Now, Shatav Nor Zeisav, as we said, the tree was swept in a new place and then grew on someone else's field. So, when do we say this din of Yachloku el shenekru b'gushehen? That it was removed, it was uprooted from its very place. As Rashi, im hakarkash is saying, it's not just the tree, but also the earth that was connecting to its roots also went. Says Rashi, shiachon l'chiyos al yadai patur min ha'arla. So it could have survived on its own based on its connection to the earth, because it was ripped out of the ground due to the flowing river. But not only was the tree, but it's also there was earth connected to it too. It says Rashi, im yoichel chiyos pater. If it's able, the Mishnah Kilayim says that if you have a tree that gets ripped out, but it's able to continue to live, that it's going to be pater from arla. So sheneker b'gushehen l'yacha shalish, and we're talking about after 3 years. Says Rashi, kolemer fil ne'ekru b'gushehen. The only time we would split it, that's only after 3 years have gone by. if we're dealing with within the first 3 years, in which there's an Isser Arla anyway, Hakol Shel Baal Hazesim, then it all goes to the Baal Hazesim. So that's the din. Why? Dear Malay, because the Baal Hazesim can say, Dear Malay, he could say, Iat Natas Basar Sholosh, he would have planted within these 3 years. Mi have a halt? Could you have eaten it? No, you couldn't have eaten it anyway because it was Arla. And therefore, the Baal Hazesim is the one who's able to get it. But Malay, why doesn't the Baal Hasada say, Iyana Nati, if I planted my own tree, Achashol Shavi Achil Nalei, Kuli Shaita, Kule, I could have eaten it, because 3 years have gone by, so Hashakad Palga Bahadoi. So let me take half. So Elo Kias Rabbanam Reish Lakish Shoshan Elo Shenekru Bigushin Uvatay Sholish. We're only saying this din of Yochloku is again if the earth was connected to this tree and it's within the first 3 years. After 3 years, I call about karka. Actually, it will go to the owner of the land. Because he could say, if I planted after 3, I could have eaten the whole thing. So but then, okay, you're saying it goes to the Baal Karka. So maybe the Baal Elon could say, if we planted within 3 years, you couldn't have eaten. So here it's half. So the answer is Mishum Diarmali, because the Baal Hasada could say, Iyananati Havi Katina, Vizarana Techutaihu Silka Viyarka. So it says that if I would have planted Havi Katina, says Rashi, Havi Zaysim Dakim, there would have been small olives, Lohoyohen sail, there would have been no shade. Vizarana Tutaihu Silka Viyarka. And I could have planted other things in that space. So therefore, since I could have planted other things in that space, so therefore, I'm entitled to it. Tana. Aymar Hala Zaysani Naital. First, one says, I'm going to take my tree. And Shemlo, we're not going to listen to him. But let's say he says, I know this tree is now in your property. I want to rip it out and take it away. We don't listen to him. My taima, I'm Rabbi Yochanan, amazing answer. Mishum Yishuv Eretz Yisrael. Because of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael, we don't want you to uproot trees, even though it was originally yours. For example, in this case, Sricha Rabba, Sricha Rabba, Tanan Hasim, Rabbi Yehuda Imer, Hamakabel Stei Avoisa Min Hanachri. If a person takes a piece of land from a Nachri, so he has a chiyuv to give meiser first. Says Rashi, hamakabel, which means lamechsa, for half. So meiser techil kol atvua. He has to actually take off all of it. Then he can give the portion to the nachri. So basically, even though really you should maybe only have to take meiser for half, but the din is, we require you to take off meiser for the whole thing before you give the nachri his part. Savruam. So upon hearing this, we thought, my stay a voice of Eretz Yisrael. What does it mean, stay a voice of? It must be referring to Eretz Yisrael. Yimar Karule stay a voice. So why do we use that name? Because stay Abraham of Yaakov. Because Eretz Yisrael belongs to our avois. The Ksavar, and it must be, why are we saying that he must separate the meiser of all the grain? Because he holds the in kainin l'nachri b'Eretz Yisrael afgiyamid meiser. Even if it's true, the nachri seemingly has some ownership, looks like he has ownership of this land, but when you are engaging in nachri, so that nachri is not going to be able to remove the chiyuv of meiser. So therefore, you, the Israel, still have a chiyuv of meiser. Umekabel kesoicher dami, and a mekabel, someone who, who accepts half, is considered to be like a choicher. Now, choicher leases a field, and his rental fee is a fixed amount of the produce per season. So ma choicher bein avad bein lo avad boyasuri meit umeitan le dechi parei chavasu dami. So it doesn't make any difference. A choicher has a chiyuv, he has to pay whatever it was agreed upon. And therefore, if he is successful or not, if he works hard or not, doesn't make any difference. He has to pay that same amount. So too, when it comes to this person's makabel regarding a nachri, so he also is going to have to take off all of the meiser. Okay. Armele of Kahanu Rav Papi V'Yarmel Samsos Rav Zvid El Hadasan Yerbi Hudo he said a makabel say of Yosef, a person who is makabel for a field which is in Eretz Yisrael, Metzia nachri Meisim Noisin Loy. Again, it says beferish that you have to separate all the meiser first. So my you're a mesik, a field ain't mesik nami. Why does it use this language of mesik? Rashi says that onus, that he grabbed the field, that he was like a form of geneva. Anytime he should be mechuyev to have to do this. So the truth is that a nachri does have the ability to remove the chiyuv of meiser. And a makabel is not like a choicher. So my stay avoisav. So what did that mean when kids stay avoisav? I thought we were talking about the field of Eretz Yisrael. No, stay avoisav mamish. It just means like an ancestral land. It says Rashi v'nachri gazlamihim, and the nachri stole it from them. Uladidehu, and the child is the child is really the original owner. The kansura banan the river kanas. The id the chavivale. Since this land is so chaviv, tveva also makabele, he's going to be more likely to accept it. Of an inish del maloi, but someone else not. So did my time of kansura banan. So what is the purpose of this kanas? Rabbi Yochanan kadesh and he bara biyadai, says Rashi. So it should be clear in his hands. Shiyachsor v'yiknena b'toich shiyikshe olav hamaiser. Yitrach v'yosef hadalmim v'yisal kanachir mimenu. Bara means brura. So which the increase is not his profits, so he will buy the land back from this nachri. So basically what we're trying to do is to get him to buy this land back. So Itmar a person who goes into his friend's field, but not the shulber shus, whenever he decides to plant a tree, he didn't get permission to do it. So Marav Shamanlo, we make an assessment of this tree that he planted. And he has the lower hand, which means, as Rashi says, so if, let's say, this tree increases the value of the land, but also there's an expenditure of having to plant it and everything, so he only has to pay the least of the two. So even though he spent more money than actually the improvements, he would only get the improvements. Shmuel Omer Oimdin, we evaluate how much a person would want this field for planting. Says Rashi, apparently having a field for trees is better than planting. So how much would a person prefer that to be? So it's actually not even a machlokis. It's questionable whether it's a field in which it's typically for planting trees, or maybe it's a field which is not used for trees. Now this statement of Rav is not explicit. Can we deduce it? He said, go and evaluate for me. I don't want this tree that he planted. So go evaluate it. And again, he'll have the lower hand that either he gets the lower of either the hotzah or the shvach. I still don't want it. Then all of a sudden you see that he builds a fence, the komanatio, and he's protecting it, which obviously shows he does want it. By your actions, it's clear that you did want this tree there. Zil shumle, go and pay. V'yadu yoina, and his hand will now be on the upper hand. Imar hayar l'tach churbatoi. Let's say a person goes into a churba, which is a dilapidated area which has nothing growing on it. Shel chavero. Ubana shel b'shosu. You decide to build a house on someone else's property. Now, and you say, I'm going to actually take my stones and my wood. I'm basically taking everything back. We'll listen to him and let him do it. So it's a machlok is whether he can actually take it back. So Rav Nachman Derek Beis Shammai. Beis Shammai says that we do listen to him, and he can get it back. Now that's the shita also Beis Shammai. So how can we say that Rav Nachman holds like Beis Shammai? So who Ki Haitan? He actually holds like the following opinion: the sign is Sherman Loy. We listen. Divrei Rav Shimon ben Elazar. Rav Shimon ben Gamliel Omer that Beis Shammai Armim Sherman Lo Beisil Armim Ein Sherman Lo. So my Havala. So what is the maskana regarding this matter? If a person builds this, is he able to take these materials back? So what is the din? So Amar Rabbi Yaakov, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, as we continue to Kuf Aleph Amud Beis, if we're talking about bibayis, that he built a house without permission, then shaymin lo, and therefore you can take it back. Besada, if we're dealing that he went into someone's field, he started planting trees without permission, then he wants to take the tree back, then ain't shaymin lo. So besada my taima, why don't we allow him to take these trees back? Mishum Yishuv Eretz Yisrael. Because of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael. That's one answer. Ikad Amri Mishum Chashad Ara. Because you've caused the land to become weakened, the depletion of its nutrients. So my binayu ikad binayu chutz haaretz. So what is that? It says Rashi Lamandi Mishum Chashad Ara Mimoin Afsadeh Vefil B'chutz haaretz Nami in Sherman. There's still this weakness of the land. Obviously, because of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael, it doesn't apply in Chutz Haaretz. Okay, let's look at question 9. You build a house. So you planted a tree. You take it back. Okay, so Moitzin. So it says like this. But Yared l'chorba shaymin lo b'sadi and shaymin lo b'sadi shiny mishum yishuv eretz Yisrael mishum chashad arav nafkamina b'chutz la'aretz. Just basically everything we just said. That's question 9. TA 27 looks like the same thing. Let's see what he writes. B'bayis yachaloimer b'sadi and yachaloimer cannot say eitzayni noitel or mishum yishuv eretz Yisrael mishum chashad arav nafkamina b'chutz la'aretz. Okay. Exactly the same question and almost verbatim the same answer. Okay, let's see the next Mishnah. Hamaskir bayis l'chavero, a person is renting a property from his friend, b'yamoisa geshamim, in the rainy season, in which a person doesn't necessarily have the ability to find renters. In yoichel hitziyai min achag v'ad Pesach, you cannot evict him from Sukkot until Pesach. That's, again, a difficult time for a person to find a new property, etc. In the summer months, you have to give him Shleishim Yom, 30 days. Now, B'krachim, if let's say you wish to evict him and you're in like a metropolis, in a big city, there you have to give him a longer amount of time, 12 months. Why? So Rashi says, Shehin Makom Hashvakim, Shekol Nimshachim Sham, Lagur Sham. Everyone wants to live there. V'habatim in Masuin Liskor. So it's really like a seller's market. There's not a lot of property, and a lot of people want to live there. So therefore, it's hard to find. So therefore, if someone is in that place, you have to give 12 months notice to them. Okay. When we're dealing with stores, let's say you're a landlord, you have to give 12 months. And Rashi explains, because one is makif hakafos lamakirin v'shayin m'lishalim yamim rabim. So basically, you give your customers a certain line of credit for up to a year. So therefore, you have to give them that much time. If we're dealing with a bakery, the shel tzavoyim or dies, shol shanim. You have to give him even longer time. And apparently, as Rashi says, they used to give a longer amount of time to pay back. Says the Gemara. So, how come we made a distinction when it comes to renting and having evicted, that when it comes to during Yomosag Shamim, that you have 30 days? Right? It says, my shna Yomosag Shamim, dechi agar inish beisa b'Yomosag Shamim. When a person typically rents during the winter, his goal is to stay there during the winter. He's not interested in moving out in the middle. But it's the same thing when a person rents in the summer months. He also doesn't want to just, he probably wants to stay there the whole summer. So what's the nafkamina? The reason why in the Mosag Shamim that we don't want him to be evicted at all, it says Ein yochel haitziyim in a chag viad Pesach, is because it's very hard to find rentals. So you get 12 months. Let's say you completed your rental agreement and it's b'yomosag geshamim and it's during the winter. Mapikle, you can leave. There's nowhere for him to go. So Rabbi Yehuda Katani. This whole thing is not talking about people leaving, but it's the amount of notification you need to give them. If you rent out a property, you're not allowed to just have them evicted. You have to at least give them 30 days notice. When you say 30 days, that means you have to give them that much notice if you're going to tell them they're not going to live there anymore. So just like the landlord has to say, I'm going to have you only stay here for X amount of days, so also if your intention is to leave, you also have to tell him that. For the same reason, the Armalek could say, "I odatan habi tarachna umosivna beinish ma'alya." Had I known that you were planning on leaving, I would have spent more time to find the next suitable person to live in my property. And therefore, just like the landlord has to give a certain amount of notice, so too the renter too. Ravasi. If let's say one of these days is the winter, that's it, you can't take them out. It says 30 days before you need to notify. If one of these 30 days notice falls, let's say the 30th day of the notice, which means after that you can really have them evicted, but then all of a sudden it falls into this time between Sukkot and Pesach, if he wishes to increase the rent, marbe, then you may do so. Let's just see if there's what Rashi says over here. Says Rashi, Hari hu ke'oichazo bebeitzim shaloi ad shemeniach lo talisoi. It's like he's holding on to his beitzim until he gives him his talis. Claimer, kivan shemalu al domov, since it's so expensive, enoch moitzi gadol mazeh. Okay, kufsi al shem shetuluyim, it's holding on to this. Okay. Okay. So lotzricha di akor bate. Let's look in Rashi. Shehefsid nicker. We're talking about a situation where the loss is recognizable. Okay. Now pshita nafale base. Let's say the house fell down. So since the landlord too has no place to live, he can evict him and he can move on. So if, let's say, the maskir he's living in a property that falls down, so he has the right to move into that property. Zavne, let's say he sold his property, or orte, it was inheritance, or yavim matana, or malay l'divs megavra diasis mine. You're no better than the person who came from there. So therefore, you can't kick me out either. Klali livrei chazina, we look into this matter. If you could have informed him and notified, you should have. If you didn't have the ability to notify him, or you can say, you're no better than me. So, for example, again, if the person's house just fell down, so he wasn't expecting it, so he didn't have the ability to give him notification about such a thing, so therefore he can say, listen, I know that you're not going to be happy, they're going to be evicted, but it's either you not having a house or I don't have a house. So you have this person who sold a ship, but he had wine, but he didn't have a place to put the wine. He asked this woman, do you have this place that I could rent out? In other words, I need basically a warehouse to store my wine. So she said, no, I don't. Azul Kicha, Yehoimli Duchtel Ale. He went and he was Makadish her, and therefore he was given this place for his wine. Azul Abese, Kosovle Gita, then he went and wrote her a get. Fine. So Shadula Azul Ihi Agra Shukuloi Mine. So she basically wanted payment. Ube Fikte Vaisve Bishvila. And she put the wine basically on the street. Amram Pudim Yeshua Kasher Asa Kini Asaloi Gamuloi. Yasha Baroish. So just like it was done to you, so it's done to you. Not only in a case where it's, let's say, property that wasn't going to be rented anyway, even a place that she would have gotten rent, to everyone else, I was happy to rent. I don't want to rent to you. Because you appear to me like a crouching lion. You took advantage of me to trick me, to marry me, just for some storage space, and therefore I don't wish that you should continue having a relationship with me regarding this wine. As we said, because the amount of time that they gave for credit was longer, apparently for 3 years. I'm going to stop. Look at question 10. Unless you gave him 30 days notice. Madin nefaling ofanim. Nafal beso shel maskir. If the maskir's house fell down, so moitzi bloy hoidiyai, you could remove him even without informing him. Next one. Zavne or orte. Let's say you either sold it or you inherited. So ein moitzin shel bloy hoidiyai. You cannot take him out without notification. Gimel. Hasi benoi b'sorach avuroi bayis. So let's say a person, his son gets married and he needs to give him a house. So im hoyelo efshil hoidio, if he could have notified iboyle leodiyai, then he should have. Ilo moitzi lo shohidiyai. So that's the following case. Let me just see what I wrote over here for TB 28. Maski yochel hoitzi es asoich eshu sorch malcham alun sorch hodiyat chila im yochel hoidio hoidiyai b'im lav yochel hoitzi ad kan.